Welcome back to episode 2 of Erotically Empowered, where we discuss all things pleasure, intimacy, and unapologetic confidence. I am your host, Ali Gamolka, and yay, this is episode 2. So I can officially say I have a podcast now. Is that right? Now that we've made it past episode 1. And I have to say that I'm hoping this sound quality is a lot better in episode 2. I've made some adjustments. Episode 1 was quite echoey, but I'm hoping that I've resolved this. Do you want to know what I've done? You want to know what I've done? If you could see behind this camera right now, those of you who are watching on YouTube, there are blankets. I have stolen all the blankets off the beds and put them on all the tiles through my open lounge and into my kitchen because the excess of tiles and open living made it quite echoey. So ChatGPT, shout out to ChatGPT, told me to do this. So I've done this and I'm hoping that the sound is a lot better. But let's get into it. Today, I want to talk about how you, as a woman, how all of us have been misled when it comes to women's pleasure. And we have barely scratched the surface of what is possible. And I know for myself, up until well into my 30s, I didn't even know there was more of a surface to scratch, if that even makes sense. and most women who come, to work with me as clients or follow me on social media and learn this stuff, women, we don't know this. We don't know this. It's and this is what, is frustrating and also disheartening, that we are so limited in our thinking as to what we believe women's pleasure is, what we believe women are capable of, that so many women will spend their entire life settling and accepting what really doesn't fulfill them, what really doesn't light them up, what really doesn't have them feeling amazing and incredible in their body, doesn't have them feeling deeply connected to themselves, to their partner. What has them complaining that they, faking a headache at the end of the day to try and get out of, being intimate because it does nothing for them. So many women will spend their entire life in this state because we aren't taught the capacity, the potential that lies within us. And that's sad. And it's sad. That's all I really have to say about it. And I'm so incredibly grateful for the women who stood before me speaking about this. And this is why now you can't shut me up about this, because we deserve to know what our bodies are capable of. We deserve to know the pleasure that exists within us. We deserve to know the ecstasy, the bliss, the soul expanding magic that exists in us. And this is what I want to, connect to today, and what I want to open your awareness to today. And you may or may not have heard this before, depending, if you've followed other pleasure leaders or followed me perhaps, then you probably would have heard some of this before. But okay, let's wind it back. For majority of us, the extent of pleasure education when we are younger, the extent that we receive is probably sex can lead to pregnancy and STDs. Wear a condom, protect yourself from pregnancy and STDs, be safe. Oh, and here's a vibrator if you want to feel something. That's it. That's the extent for a lot of us of our pleasure education. And of course, the sex and the pregnancy and the STDs, that has nothing to do with pleasure. But this is my entire point, that most of us aren't raised to know this because our caregivers and parents and mothers and women around us weren't even taught this. So we aren't educated enough to know how to connect to our body. And we go through our life disconnected, living in our minds, disconnected from our pleasure and wondering why, we avoid intimacy like the plague, why we fake headaches, why, we feel disconnected in our marriages and relationships. And then as we start to grow older, we may start to see things online talking about, hey, it's okay if you don't feel much during penetration. Hey, it's okay. Majority of women need clitoral and intense clitoral at that stimulation in order to feel pleasure, let alone orgasm. Hey, that's okay. You're not alone. You're not alone. Here's another toy. Now, while this is empowering in some ways, because it's very empowering to know that you're not alone, of course, and it's very empowering, the adult toy world, it's great that a lot of the shame has been released around adult stores and adult toys, and a lot more women are feeling comfortable to go and get the rose toy or go and, whatever. Is that what true empowerment feels like for you? Just tune in and ask yourself for a minute. Okay, so you may be able to feel pleasure, even great pleasure with your toy. You may be able to feel pleasure or perhaps orgasm, with clitoral stimulation during intimacy. Great. But if these are your only ways, just reflect. Do you feel truly empowered in your pleasure? And this is not a judgment. This is not a judgment at all. This is not about condemning. It's just actually stopping and reflecting and going, is this empowering to me? Because for me and for the women who I work with and the women who, follow me online, empowering means freedom. Empowering, sexual empowerment means feeling free in your body, not just feeling reliant on one particular way or location on the body to feel something. And we are taught that, hey, you should be okay with it. Like, be okay with it, because this is how majority of the women are. And again, while it's great to know that you're not alone, no, you don't have to be okay with feeling limited and restricted and suppressed. No, you absolutely do not. No, you were not here. You were not put here on this planet to rely on a toy for every single sexual encounter or every single intimate moment with yourself, because that's the only freaking way you can feel something. No. Whether you believe in God, universe, source, whatever, you were not created to feel only in one way. You were not created to have to rely on a mechanical object, for starters. And I have nothing against toys. Let me clarify. I still have my toys, and I mean, I don't use them during intimacy, but I will use my Air Pulse sucker when I just want the 2-minute quickie. Very, very different. I'll go into that later on in further episodes, but very different to the soul expanding pleasure, self-pleasure practices that I do. But you were not born. You were not. Stop and think about it for a moment. Do you honestly believe that you were created to be numb to an extent that the only way that you can feel your orgasm, or sometimes even just pleasure during intimacy, is with a mechanical, a powered toy? Come on. No, it's absurd when we think about it, right? Yet that is so often how women's pleasure is portrayed. That you should be okay if you rely on a toy. You should be okay if you need clitoral stimulation in order to feel something, and that, intimacy then revolves around very specific motions and actions. Now, while all pleasure is perfect and amazing, toys can be fun, the clit is a beautiful, delicious spot. It's a delicious location. It has the most nerve endings, and it's incredible that we have this spot in our body. So nothing's wrong with any of this, but I'm just saying that if you know intuitively inside that you want to experience more and expand to more, no, you do not have to be okay with settling. And you do not have to believe this, what we are fed, that women's pleasure is so limited. It's absurd. And in any moment, you can make the decision to expand on your pleasure. And it comes down to connection. It comes down to connection. Now, for a lot of women, majority of women, our first connection to our body, as in to our pleasure, was via the clitoris, because it's incredible and it houses all these, thousands and thousands of nerve endings, and it's easy to feel sensation. So a lot of women, that was our first, connecting to our pleasure. And that's great and incredible. But a lot of us then just got stuck there, because that is the most sensitive location on our body. So then when we tried to explore outside of that, because we'd done no actual connecting, we couldn't really feel anything. And perhaps our first connection to the clitoris was potentially, or one of our first experiences was potentially with a powered toy, which even more so, it then became, this is where I use the term desensitization. There is no damage caused from toys whatsoever. But yes, absolutely, a woman will tell you that if she has conditioned herself to rely on high power, then she will struggle to feel without that. And that's where I use the term desensitization, and where I help women to, explore and expand their pleasure beyond this. But for a lot of us, that was our first experience. And we stuck there for years upon years, and then wondered why, why am I not feeling what, I really want to feel during penetration? Why am I not really feeling anything, during sex? Why am I not really feeling anything without my toy? And instead of looking at it and going, well, hey, I've never actually really learned how to connect in this way, we then go into thinking something's wrong with us and we're broken, and we get frustrated, and we get so fixated on the orgasm, on the end goal, instead of connection. Orgasm and pleasure are simply byproducts of the level of connection that you have with your body. Now, if you struggle to be in your body and you feel disconnected from your body, you will struggle with pleasure, or you will need to use something very specific or bypass, the emotional body, which is where orgasm lives, the energy in the body. We'll go into more depth in future episodes, but you will need to bypass that with adrenaline, intense friction, or perhaps external stimulants like porn, or even substances to help you relax, or relying on a partner to help you relax. Whatever it is, if you don't have a deep level of connection with your body and learn how to connect and create intimacy with yourself, then you will probably find yourself limited in pleasure. Connection is the key to pleasure. And if we were taught this from a young age, we would be we would feel so free in our pleasure. We would feel so freaking empowered because it's literally limitless. It is limitless. Orgasm is a buildup and a release of energy in your body. That is it. Orgasm is a buildup and release of energy in your body. Now, this energy can be connected to any which way. This energy can be connected to without touch. Now, that's a whole other level of expansion, but this is where energetic orgasms come from. You know, there's full body orgasms, heartgasms, which I would have laughed at you if you had have told me that, mentioned that to me years ago, but I experienced that for the first time myself last year and have many times since. I won't even talk about that now. It even sounds like a bit of a nut job when you talk about it. And I fully understand that because I was, once had zero understanding and I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't feel it myself. But this energy can be connected to anywhere. But a lot of us get stuck where? On the most sensitive part, which is incredible and amazing. And we are so, we have this place, this beautiful location on our body that is highly sensitive. However, we can expand past that if we desire. And that is what my message is day in, day out to women, that you have so much pleasure potential in you. You do not have to feel restricted. You do not have to feel limited in your pleasure. And in fact, now I hate using the word normal and not normal because there's, really normal. There's no such thing. However, when people say it's normal to rely on clitoral stimulation or toys, I would argue that it's not normal. It's less normal to be restricted in your body in these ways. That is not your natural state of being. You are a pleasure being, and you've probably heard that saying before, and it is so true because you are a pleasure being. You were created. You are energy, right? You are an energetic being. And this energy is what? That's your erotic energy, your orgasmic energy, your life force energy. It's all the same thing. This is what builds and contracts in orgasm. You are an energetic being. You are a pleasure being. You have the capacity to feel, to connect to sensation, to connect to this energy. It is not normal, if we want to use normal and unnormal, it is not normal to be disconnected from this state, from your pleasure state. Being connected to your pleasure, feeling open and free in your pleasure is the most normal state of being that you could possibly exist in. A woman who feels free and safe in her body is also a woman who feels free in her pleasure. They are so completely intertwined. And if you do not feel free in your pleasure to some capacity, if your desire feels stifled, your libido is low, this is simply a disconnect, simply a lack of safety and connection in the body, which equals a lack of freedom in the body. But it is the most normal and natural state to be connected to your erotic energy, your orgasmic energy, your life force energy. It is the most normal and natural state to be an orgasmic woman. Now, of course, there are things. We are humans. We live in a human world. Of course, there are things that are going to impact that connection. There's stress. There's, day-to-day things that are going to disconnect us, potentially trauma as well. Different things will cause disconnect, and that is part of the human experience. But we can always come back. We can always learn to come back. Being a woman who feels free in her body and her pleasure and her orgasmic energy and connects to her pleasure any which way she enjoys, and during intimacy, without relying on toys or without relying on one particular location in the body. A woman who is connected to that is simply a woman who is connected to her body and feels free in her body. She is not a woman who is perfect and never has stuff going on. Absolutely not. But it's a commitment to continue coming back. And it's a reframing of, instead of looking at pleasure as goal, and intimacy and sex, and looking at as goal-based, okay, our sex life sucks. I don't orgasm. My desire's low. Look at those things as symptoms. They are symptoms, like beautiful signposts directing you back to there's a disconnect happening. This disconnect could be happening from, a variety of reasons, but ultimately there's a disconnect there. So shift your focus. When we shift our focus from that, this is when we can start expanding on our pleasure, start deepening intimacy with ourselves, start deepening, this connection to ourselves, but start looking at it and going, okay, first and foremost, how can I start connecting to my body more? What can I do right now or tomorrow to start connecting to my body more deeply? Perhaps it's, setting, and I did this in the beginning on my journey because I had lived, my whole life disconnected, of course, and was so stuck in my head. I set alarms on my phone. And this is something I share with my clients and that a lot of clients do. I set alarms on my phone during the day to come back to my body, to ask myself, what's going on in my body? What's going on in my body? Because I was never in my body. I was never connected to my body. And then I would go into intimacy and be like, ugh. If I went into intimacy, because like I said, I was faking the headaches, let me tell you that. Not the headaches, but no, what I actually did, and I realized this as I started my journey, I would subconsciously start fights with my then partner to ensure that sex was off the table that night. Yep. And I didn't really realize what I was doing, but I would start fights because I knew if we were in an argument and fight, then I wouldn't have to have sex, right? And all of this, my low libido, my deeply unfulfilling intimacy, when I started my journey of reconnecting to my body, and I started realizing, like, here I am. I've lived my entire life running from my body, whether it's through substance abuse, mental health, living in my head, whatever, eating disorders. I've spent a lifetime running from my body, and here I am going into intimacy and expecting it to be this mind-blowing experience, expecting myself to feel something without a high-powered toy. Like, how is it possible when I've never been in my body? So one of the things that I did when I started connecting was I literally set freaking alarms on my phone to check into my body. What's going on in my body right now? What's going on in my body? And in the beginning, there wasn't a lot going on. Let me tell you that. Well, it was more so that there wasn't a lot that I could understand, I could feel, because I couldn't feel anything because I'd never learned. And then once I started doing that more and coming back more and then doing the deeper self-pleasure practices, I started to feel more. And with that feeling more, I started to feel more of all the discomfort of the years that I'd run from. And that has to come up. You have to connect to that to allow that energy to move if you want to feel the good stuff. It's all the same energy, remember? You can't disconnect from the discomfort and expect to feel the beautiful array of pleasure that exists within you if you're constantly disconnecting. But I started doing this and over time and with the self-pleasure practices, my body started to come to life and I was like, oh, okay. This is what's been in me all along. Oh, okay. I had no idea. I had no idea. Like I literally thought nothing existed outside of a toy and that I should just be okay because that's what majority of women need. But it was mind-blowing to me that it all stemmed from connection. And if you take away anything from this episode, take away that one word, connection. Drum that into your beautiful, beautiful soul. That connection is your key to experiencing the pleasure, the orgasm, the deeply profound intimacy that you crave. Connection is the key to awakening your desire, your fire, your libido. Connection is the key when things in your life pull you away and you start to notice your fire being dimmed again. You start to notice perhaps, you're pulling away from intimacy. Let connection bring you back. Look at it as a beautiful symptom of disconnect and go, okay, what's going on here? How can I come back to me? Connection. You have so much pleasure potential in you, and what you have been spoon-fed about women's pleasure, throw it all in the bin. Throw it all away. Anything that has you thinking women's pleasure is limited, discard it right now. And I want you to open your awareness to this knowing. Intuitively. That's why you're here. That's why you were drawn to this podcast. Intuitively that you weren't born to be limited. You know this. And it all comes down to what? Connection. I shall see you next time, and I encourage you to go from this episode, perhaps setting alarms on your phone, even just as a starter, to bring you back. Start looking for ways that you can connect to your body more.